Hello everyone, this is Jim Lucy, Editor-in-Chief for Electrical Wholesaling and Electrical Marketing, with episode number 114 of the Today's Electrical Economy podcast series sponsored by Champion Fiberglass. Champion began producing epoxy fiberglass conduit and fittings in 1988 and 1989 developed the first conduit from epoxy resins that had flame resistance and low smoke characteristics. This met the most stringent codes and specifications. This episode will take a look at Electrical Marketing's latest electrical product sales estimates. We'll also offer updates on several key weekly indicators to track. Initial unemployment claims at the state level, freight rail car traffic, the Baker Hughes rig count, oil prices, and copper prices. Our thanks again to the folks from Champion Fiberglass for sponsoring this podcast for more than 100 episodes over the past 5 years. For the week ending February the 15th, the advanced figure for seasonally adjusted initial claims for unemployment was 219,000. That's an increase of 5,000 from the previous week's revised level. The 4-week moving average for unemployment claims was 215,250, and that's a decrease of 1,000 from the previous week's revised average. The U.S. unemployment rate for January is 4%. That is down 0.1% from December. 4 states had a decrease in unemployment claims of at least 1,000 for the week ending February the 15th. That's a few more states than we've seen the last time we checked in on this data. Those states are California, with a decline of 4,922, now sitting at 45,623 claims. Florida, with a decline of 1,163 claims, now sitting at 5,615. Pennsylvania, with a decline of 1,160, now sitting at 11,322. And New Jersey, now sitting at 1,014, now sitting at 9,428. Only 2 states had initial unemployment claims of more than 1,000 for the week ending February 15th. This is a large drop from the past few weeks when we would see 10 or more states at this level. The 2 states with claims over 1,000 were Kentucky, claims up 3,033 to 5,118, and Tennessee, claims up 2,753, claims now sitting at 5,645. One of the more interesting leading economic indicators for the overall U.S. economy is freight rail traffic. It measures the amount of raw materials and finished goods being shipped by rail. The best source for this data is the American Association of Railroads, or AAR. It publishes this data weekly at www.aar.org. Through February the 19th, total U.S. weekly rail traffic was 487,748 carloads and intermodal units. That's up 1.5% compared with the same week last year. It is a 6% dip from the first week of February, and we will be tracking that. Total combined U.S. rail traffic for the first 7 weeks of 2025 was 3,338,568 carloads and intermodal units. That is an increase of 4.7% compared to this time last year. The individual freight category numbers were strong again, with large intermodal unit traffic leading all other categories with a 9.3% increase. Intermodal traffic measures the number of shipping containers being shipped by rail. These containers are the backbone of international shipping logistics as they are transported by ship, by rails, or by truck. Other categories in the green in the most recent data were petroleum and petroleum products at 6.2%, farm products excluding grain and food at 5.5%, grain at 3.5%, chemicals at plus 3.1%, and forest products up 1.6%. Lagging were metallic ores and minerals and motor vehicles and parts, both down 3.9%. If you track the oil market, you're probably familiar with the Baker Hughes rig count, which tracks the oil and gas rigs that are operating in the United States. This data is available by state, by basin, and nationally at www.rigcount.bakerhughes.com. This slide gives you an idea of the largest oil and gas deposits and gives you a good sense of just how many of these large oil plays are in Texas and Oklahoma, and how big an area the Marcellus gas region covers in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and parts of West Virginia. The Baker Hughes rig count gained 7 oil rigs in the most recent data, primarily because of a 7-rig increase in Oklahoma. Oklahoma now has 49 rigs in operation, and that is an 11.4% increase over this time last year. The total rig count for the United States oil and gas rigs combined is 592. That's down 34 rigs for a 5.4% decrease year over year. Gas rigs are seeing the biggest decline, down 17.5%. Oil rigs compared to this time last year are down 3%. The current price of WTI crude oil as of February 24, 2025 is $70.34 per barrel. They have been in a steady range between $70 and $75 per barrel since the beginning of February, and for the most part have been holding strong at that floor of $70 per barrel. Economists like to call copper pricing Dr. Copper because it's the leading economic indicator for future business activity since copper is used in so many industries. The construction industry is among the leading markets for copper because of its use in wire and cable and copper plumbing pipe. The current price for copper is $4.53 per pound as of Monday, February 24th. When you look at copper prices over the past 5 years, from right around the beginning of COVID to the present time, you can clearly see what a wild journey they've been on. From a low of $2.10 per pound on March 23, 2020, to a high of $5.11 per pound on May 20, 2024, they have over this time period averaged $3.88 per pound. The COVID year prices pulled this 5-year average down a bit, and if you look over the past year, the average price has been closer to $4.31 per pound. It's interesting to note that copper has been above $4 per pound for over 240 days, with the exception of 3 days in August 2024. This is the longest run over $4 per pound since April the 5th, 2021 through June 13th, 2022, and that is a run of 313 days. Each year, Electrical Marketing estimates product sales by 17 key product categories. We develop the percentage for each of these product categories through more than 100 responses to surveys of the large electrical distributors on their sales percentages by these categories. We then take the estimate sales using electrical wholesaling sales per employee formulas. We'll highlight the latest data, product data in this podcast, but if you want a quarterly update for the overall sales picture, it's available as part of a $99 annual subscription to Electrical Marketing. Again, the product sales potential we do estimate once a year. The overall sales figures we estimate 4 times a year. Before we dive into the product sales percentages, I thought you might be interested to see the 10 largest states in electrical sales potential, and that's overall sales potential, as ranked by Electrical Marketing state sales estimates. These 10 states account for an estimated 51.3% in sales potential, and the 3 largest states, California, Texas, and Florida, account for 27% of our nation's total national sales estimates. That's mind-boggling to me, but it follows the trends we've discussed often in these podcasts about the consolidated nature of the electrical wholesaling industry. The 10 states with the most sales potential, according to our most recent sales estimates, and this is using employment data through December of 2024. Number 1, California, with approximately $16.1 billion in estimated sales potential. Texas comes in number 2 with $14.4 estimated billion in sales potential. Florida comes in $10 billion in sales potential, number 3. Number 4, New York, with $6.29 billion in estimated sales potential. Number 5, Ohio, $5.573 billion in sales potential. Pennsylvania comes in $5.2 billion, that's number 6. Number 7, North Carolina, $4.974 billion. Illinois, our estimate is $4.953 billion in sales potential. And Michigan comes in at $4.6 billion in sales potential. Number 10, Georgia, $4.2 billion in sales potential. One of the things I also like to look at, when you look at the total sales, in California we mentioned being number 1, it accounts by itself for 10.8% of the total sales of U.S. sales. We're estimating roughly $148.9 billion, California 16.1, so it's almost 11% of the total U.S. sales figure. I track a number of other different types of sales data when it comes at the state level, whether it's building permits, population, and some of the employment numbers. And one of the things I am always fascinated to find that California always seems to come in right around 10%, 11%, sometimes 9%, but within a range of the total U.S. number, and a wide variety of different categories. Some other states are very much the same, but always impressed with just how big California comes in with any of these numbers. As I mentioned earlier, we track 17 key electrical product categories for estimates. When you group some of these categories together into the overall largest product areas that distributors will stock, you'll find that wire and cable accounts for 13.3% of total sales on a national level. It's good for about $19.8 billion is our estimate for that. Lighting is about 36.3% billion in total in sales through distributors, and that's including our estimates for lamps at 5.4% of distributor stocks and sales, lighting fixtures at 16.9% of distributor sales, and lighting controls at 2.2% of sales. One of the other really large areas that distributors sell in stock is distribution equipment and overcurrent protection. In total, these categories will account for 18% of total sales. Distribution equipment, 5.3% at 7.8 billion. Switchgears at 8% total sales, 11.8 billion. Circuit breakers at 5.1 billion at 3.4% of total sales. And fuses, 1.3% of sales, 1.986.4 billion in total sales. The other large categories that we provide estimates at the state and national level are wiring devices, that is receptacles, at 3.1%, conduit and raceways, 5.2% total sales. That's good for 7.6 billion. Conduit fittings and accessories, 3.4%. We consider it to be a $5 billion market through distributors. Connectors and accessories at 1.7%. Our estimates show that it's approximately $2.5 billion through distributors. Enclosures, it's 2.4%, about $3.5 billion total market. Outlets and boxes and accessories, 2% of sales, $3 billion in total. Industrial control, 6.3% of distributor sales, $9.4 billion in total sales through distributors. Utility products, 2.9% total of the sales, $4.3 billion in total sales. And voice data video products at 3.8% of the total of distributor sales, total market roughly 5.7%. We also have a other category that categorizes all the other products. We couldn't figure a way to fit into these other categories. About $20 billion in sales there. I always am asked, do you have finer breakdowns in the categories we show here? And the answer is no. We found this to be about as fine a detail we could get from distributors to get enough responses in the survey to provide this data. But I think it does give you a pretty good overall of an idea of the size of the various different markets. And as we all know, each of these markets is a world unto itself, and you can break it down into many sub-markets and many different manufacturers, many stories to tell in all of these market areas. So I do find it interesting to look at these overall breakdowns. And I wish we could break it down further, but I think we provide a pretty good service by breaking it down as far as we have right here. Now let's provide some examples of the product percentages of some of the major product categories by the states. As I mentioned, the full updated data on a state level for products is available as part of subscription to Electrical Marketing. I always wrestle with using our national product percentage estimates at the metropolitan or county level, but I haven't figured out an accurate way to adjust the percentage to take into account the differences in different market mixes in various geographic areas. For example, it wouldn't make much sense to use the same national percentage that we have here for industrial controls for the Fort Myers market, which depends so much on single-family, multifamily construction, and light commercial or retail construction, and Flint, Michigan, which has a much higher mix of industrial business. I'll keep thinking of it and hope we can come up with something on it. But just to give you a sense of just how large some of these product categories are potential is in several of the larger states, let's look at a few individual product areas at the state level. Now, for instance, I'll look at as I mentioned, California, the largest market, about $16.1 billion overall. We estimate that electrical distributors are selling about $2.2 billion in wire and cable just in the state of California. When you look at the for the lighting market in California, for lamps, distributors selling 86.5 million, 2.7 billion in lighting fixtures, and about 3.5 billion in lighting controls. Distribution equipment, again, just in California, it's 855.5 million. Switchgear, about $1.2 billion market for California alone, and circuit breakers, 553.7 billion. We won't get into all the different categories that are on the slide here, but it does give you a sense of just how big these individual markets are and how important the roles the local branches play, the independent reps play, all the buying influences in the market when you think about the amount of business being transacted in any of these individual product areas. And as we mentioned, each of these product categories are a world into its own, and when you get down to the state level, they're a world into its own as far as the major players. Who's the strongest distributor or rep selling in wire and cable or lamps or switchgear breakers? There's lots of stories to tell each of these individual categories, but I hope this gives you at least a little bit of an idea about how big an area these products are in each of the individual states. Well, that wraps up our podcast for today. A special thanks again to the folks for Champion Fiberglass for sponsoring today's Electrical Economy series for over 100 episodes over the past 5 years. Please contact me if there's any other types of economic data you would like us to cover in these podcasts. And if you do have any questions on our electrical product estimates, I know I threw a lot of data at you in this podcast, but glad to discuss how we come up with our numbers on that. And hopefully it gives you an accurate representation of what we think to be the size of these various product areas are at the state level and national level. And We do appreciate the distributors that when we did the surveys a couple of years back that spent some time giving us a good idea on this. We did the percentages that we got from the very largest of the nationals to mid-sized to small ones, and I think that it was a good representation of the market as a whole. Our next presentation will be on March the 10th. I can't believe we're talking March already, but hopefully it's going to bring some warmer weather to most parts of the country. We've just got through a pretty good cold freeze here in Kansas City. But until then, stay healthy, be happy. I look forward to talking with you in 2 weeks.